Okay, so hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Claire Corkill. I'm the Development Manager at the CBA. And I'm just here to introduce our speaker for this evening, Emily Wilson, who is from JEM Associates. And we are working with Emily and her colleague Jael to develop our Festival of Archaeology evaluation strategy for the next 3 years and then roll it out. And Emily's going to introduce you to our toolkit for this year's festival and the evaluation techniques that we'd like you to use. So before we get started, I just want to draw your attention to the chat. We've got a post in there from Debbie that invites you to say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from. But also we've got a link in there to our code of conduct, and we ask everybody to just abide by that throughout the event this evening. The session's being recorded, and we'll also be popping the recording onto the CBA website next week so that you can refer back to this evening's talk if you need to when you're thinking about your evaluation processes for your festival events. But I think that's all I need to say by way of introduction. So without further ado, I shall hand you over to Emily and leave you to it.
Hello, hi, thank you for giving up an hour of your evening to join us today. As Claire said, my name's Emily Wilson. I'm one of 2 directors at JEM Associates. So we are evaluation, social impact and participation consultants. And we work with various different organisations across the country. Really pleased to be working with the Council for British Archaeology for the next 3 years on the evaluation of the Festival of Archaeology. Really love this kind of work, really excited to be part of the team and to be with you here tonight. I'm just going to pop in the chat and in amongst everyone's lovely messages about who they are, what we're going to go through today. So we'll do a quick whistle-stop tour about the purpose of evaluation and something that we call a story of change, which I will go into a little bit more detail of. We'll talk about what it is that we want to measure through the evaluation, how we're proposing to approach evaluation over the next 3 years, doing things a little bit differently. And then we'll go through some quick and hopefully easy data collection methods that you could embed into your events. We've only got an hour and there's quite a lot to get through. So unfortunately, you'll hear an awful lot of my voice. And I realise it's a lot of information, but as Claire said, is being recorded. You can refer back to it. You will also get like a full evaluation guidance document, which we're kind of covering a very small amount of today, but lots more detail will be in that document. So once you get that and you've kind of heard what I have to say today, that will all make sense, I think. I'm just going to pop in the chat what I've just said in terms of what we're going to go through. So just got that to refer back to. If you have any questions as I'm going along, just because the time is so tight, I've left time at the end for questions. So if you think about them in the moment, you think I'm going to forget that, do just pop it in the chat. If I don't answer it throughout the kind of presentation, I will come back to it at the end. So we'll hopefully have 10 minutes or so for Q&A at the end. If you've got any questions, and anything that I don't manage to cover in those 10 minutes, I will put together a document just of, I'll literally write the answers to questions and we'll send that out with the guidance as well, so that anything that you didn't get answered, you should get an answer to. So I'm going to share my screen and get rid of that one and share. So I was just seeing one slide PowerPoint and not all my ridiculous notes. Yes, great. Okay, so we're going to go through the introduction to evaluation and starting off with why do we bother with evaluation? So not just about being answerable to funders, which lots of people do say when you go, why are we doing this? So because we are change consultants, because we're interested in impact and we're interested in also the process of how that impact happens. Evaluation is very much about embracing that learning so that we can improve what we do. For the CBA, we're looking to understand what's working so we can share that practice across all the different organisers and within the organisation itself. And so we understand the challenges. So the challenges to creating impact, the challenges within the process, so that we can improve those and try and mitigate against them, try and make things better for people. Essentially, what we're trying to do is make things better. What we want to do is for people to have better lives, and we need to understand what the impact is and what made it happen in order to be able to do that. So in that, we want to understand the difference that we're making. What's the change that's happening as a result of what we're doing? And that's so that we can make the case for future investment and future resources. But it also helps with advocacy. So it helps to get more people involved, participants, volunteers, collaborators, partners. If we can really tell the story of the difference we're making, that really helps to make the case. And something that quite often gets forgotten, I think, when we're talking about evaluation is it validates what we already know. So you might intrinsically know the difference that you're making in your event. You might anecdotally see things, hear things, and you think, well, I know that positive change is happening. But through doing really robust evaluation, we can really prove that. And it's not just about proving it externally, it's about proving it to yourself or to your volunteers, or your team. And that's really important. It's a really important value, and it really helps people to feel validated and to fully know that what they're doing is making a difference. And that can be really motivating for your team and for your volunteers, for your boards, all that kind of thing. So, it isn't just about making a difference externally, it is about that internal difference as well. So next, and my buttons are not working. So next, I'm going to take you through something that we call a story of change. So you might have come across these in slightly different guises before. People often refer to a theory of change or a logic model. And we call it a story of change because we think that's what it is. It's telling the story of the change that we want to make and how we plan to make it. So essentially, a story of change is broken down into 4 different parts. So the how is that's all about what goes into something. So the resources that we use, so that might be budget or time. It might even be natural resources like literal materials. And it's also about the how we work. So, sorry, my voice is going slightly. So it's about our principles and our good practice. What are the values that make a difference? And this is a really important part of the evaluation because it's quite often those values and principles that are actually creating the impact, not necessarily the activity that you're doing. So you could do various different activities, but as long as those values stay the same, you're still creating an impact. So the what is literally those activities. So the events, the activities that happen, the actual thing that you're going to do, your delivery. Then we have the who. So that's all the people who matter. So we refer to them as stakeholders, which is kind of slightly evaluator wording. But essentially, it's the people who experience change because of the activity that happened. And so that isn't just about participants, that's about you as organisers, that is about the CBA itself. It could be knock-on effects, so it could be about local businesses that are nearby to an event happening. And we do something called stakeholder mapping, where we look at where all those knock-on effects might be and who might experience change as a result of what we're doing. And then the 4th element is why. So those outcomes, the difference that we're making, what change happened as a result of the activities that we've done with those different people. So we call them outcomes, but it's essentially the change or the difference that we've made. And we put equal emphasis on all 4 parts of that story of change. So no piece is more important than another. Quite often in evaluation, people will go, well, what we really want to measure just what's happened, but they don't think about the other 3 things that all contribute to to that. So they all have equal weighting. And then next we have, so this is, and I don't think you'll be able to see it very well, and I'm not expecting you to be able to read this. And this is in the evaluation guidance, so you will be able to have a look at this in more detail. But this is the story of change that we've developed, and we did this co-creatively with the team. So we didn't just sit in a room and decide what this needed to be. It was a really iterative process where we worked with the team to figure this out. But essentially that's those 4 things that I just talked about. So the first column is those principles and the resources that go into making the festival happen. So some of those principles include cultivating wonder and sparking joy, empowering individuals and organisations, inviting collaboration and co-creation, and honouring diversity. So some really important principles that underlie all the happening of the festival. And then we have the who, so the people, what change happens to. And we've got 5 different stakeholders within that list. So we've got your festival participants. We've pulled out young collaborators as slightly different because they engage with the process and the festival in a slightly different way. We've got you as organisers. Then we've got the CBA itself, and then we've got the whole heritage sector. And within that, we're talking about partners and collaborators, funders, sponsors, the kind of wider sector. And then we move on. We have the what. So that's broken down into the different types of events and activities that happen. I won't go through them all. And then we move on to the why. Now, in this particular diagram, we've separated the why into 2 different things. So there's something that we call outputs, and I realise really jargony language, but that's essentially the numbers and the reach. So sometimes that's where evaluation stops, and what you end up with, this many people engaged with this activity, end of story. But what it doesn't talk about is, and so what difference did it make? And we quite often have people go, well, our main outcome is to increase the amount of people that we engage with. And we would always go, but why? What difference does it make if you engage with more people? What are you hoping will happen? And so all of those other things that come after that, all those outcomes are intrinsically the reason why we do the work, because we want these positive changes to happen for people or organisations or the sector. So you can look at that on different layers. I've got no way of seeing the time. Oh, 18:43. Okay. Oh, Debbie, I just realised that I don't think we did the poll at the beginning. Don't
Want me to do it now?
Yeah, could we just take a little pause and demonstrate using an evaluation tool? So if I hadn't jumped in so quickly at the beginning, we would have done this at the start. So you should have had a poll pop up on your screen to ask you how confident you currently feel gathering feedback about your event. And it asks you that on a 0 to 10 scale. So 0 being absolutely not at all, up to 10, I'm really super confident, I know what I'm doing. So just ask you to complete.
If you could just do the first question, they both have popped up in the same one, so I'll repeat it at the end for the second question. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just answer the first question. They're both the same question. I'm just going to ask it.
Can everybody see that poll at all?
Sorry to interrupt. I think, well, the submit button doesn't go bold, I think because it wants us to answer both.
Okay. Sorry, Emily.
Yeah, so I'm furiously clicking submit, and
well, maybe just put the same answer in for both.
And we'll do it again. I'm really sorry about that.
It's a really good example of how there can be challenges when you do these things. It's probably going to ask me to do it, isn't it? I'll just ignore it. How many people have we got on? Have we got 4 on?
Sorry, I minimized it to unmute myself and now it's disappeared from my screen. Would you mind terribly sharing it again? Sorry.
It should be on there still. It's going to go on at the end, so we'll do it at the end as well. Sorry.
That's all right. I can't see that it's minimized or anything, so I don't know. I don't know what I did. Sorry.
Is it in your, is it like in your, I don't know what computer it is it in your dock, like down the bottom of your page? I don't know, you might be on a PC and it might be different.
Oh, I'll end it and then we can do it again at the end.
Sorry about that.
That's
I said
right.
7, if that helps. So I'm sort of like 6 or 7.
Okay.
Right, I've ended it. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay, sorry about that slight segue. I looked down at my plan and went, oh, the poll. Okay, so what we move on to next is what it is that we are trying to find out through the evaluation. So these are our big questions. So we don't ask these kind of bluntly like this, but when we are pulling together all the data that will come in, these are kind of the big questions that we're trying to answer. So what is the experience of festival attendees? And that's obviously a big question, and we have lots of little questions underneath that to kind of really dig down into what that means and what it means for different people. What social value is created by the festival, and which elements of the festival create different types of social value, and different amounts of social value as well. And who is the festival reaching, and what are the gaps? So there are big research questions, and you might be thinking, what on earth do you mean by social value? And so social value is just what we just talked about. So it's all those whys. It is the positive benefits that your work brings to people. So like I was saying, not just about the numbers, not just about those outputs, but what difference does it make to people? That is what social value is. We quite often refer to it as the triple bottom line. So that's kind of basically like economic profit, the economic difference, prosperity. It's about people and it's about planet. So that might not be planet as a whole. It might not be about climate change and that kind of thing, but it might be about, does it make a difference to the place that we're in? What are the knock-on effects? So that's what we're thinking about when we think about social value. And what I've pulled out here is just from that previous big diagram, might be a little bit easier to see. These are the kind of differences that we're hoping the festival will make to participants. So number one is enjoyment. We really want them to enjoy themselves, that they experience something new, that they maybe gain knowledge and skills, that they feel seen, heard and represented, that they feel connected to other people, that they feel connected to the past. And the reason that this is kind of in these 4 lines is we envisage there's a little bit of a chain of events that happens. So it's not necessarily linear like this. And this is a very blunt way of showing it, because somebody might, they might have increased aspirations without having all of the other things. We're not saying that you can't have that without having the other things, but that there is generally a bit of a progression. So if they've experienced some of those other things, they might then progress on to other activities. Feel more valued, have reduced isolation, feel connected to place, and then have increased aspirations, feel more empowered, have a sense of belonging. And then ultimately, we've called it pathway progression. So that's a bit of a funny jargony way of saying something, but and that might be about careers. It could be that, but it could just be that they take a more positive path in life, that they get involved in a club, or they find a new group of friends and their life takes a more positive trajectory than it would have. So it's not just about kind of career progression and thinking along those lines, although that could be a big part of it. So on this, I've just highlighted some of the really key ones that would be great to measure across all of the events, or as much as we can. Enjoyment, obviously a really big one. Knowledge and skills, another one that's fairly easy for people to kind of grasp and understand and get the concept of. And then feeling connected with people and or past and or place. Not necessarily all three, depends on the event. So we're looking at some of those really key things. Don't have to measure everything. We're not expecting everybody to measure all of the outcomes. And some of them we can, look at certain things and go, well, that's actually an indicator that that will happen in the future. So that's some of the work that we do as evaluators when it comes to looking at the data later on. So we're not expecting you to be asking questions about all of these things. So our approach to evaluation, we're taking kind of 4 different approaches in this first year to try some different methods. So the first is that you come to something like this introduction and you take the evaluation guidance and you independently put some tools in place and then share that data with us at the end of the festival. So fairly light touch on our part in terms of kind of supporting. So there'll be this, there's this training element and there's the guidance document to refer to. But essentially you would have the agency to take from that what you wanted and embed into your event what you think is appropriate. The second thing that we're doing, so what I should say, sorry, is when you signed up your event, you will have been asked a question about whether you wanted to be involved in any of the piloting methods. So you may or may not have, if you volunteered to do that, have received an introduction email today to say you've been chosen to take part in one of the piloting methods and that I will be in touch with you in the future, near future. So we're just in the kind of pulling those together. And so if you're involved in one of the piloting methods, if your event and organisation have been chosen to take part in one of those, we will have another session to give you a bit more support to work through that. So the first of those piloting methods is using a pre-printed feedback card. So we've designed the card, it will be printed and a bunch of them will be sent to you. And what you will need to do is just disseminate those at your event, collect them back up at the end and send them back to the CBA. So we're hoping that that's, really light touch, minimal resources needed on your part, and quite an easy thing to embed into your event without the need for lots more thinking and lots more time. So we were really aware that we didn't want to put extra pressure and extra asks onto the organisers, knowing the kind of breadth of events and the breadth of types of organisations. So we've tried to get a real kind of breadth of therefore how we do the evaluation. So that's the kind of bare minimum pilot, is using those pre-printed feedback cards. The next one is to collect a little bit of data using that evaluation guidance, but we can handhold you through that a little bit more, help you choose what tools might work, and then input that data into a spreadsheet that we'll provide. And again, we will give you some training on how to fill that in. It will be straightforward. And what that will do is kind of automatically produce you a 1-page dashboard that shows the impact of your event. So I think we've got 15 people trying the feedback cards, 8 or 10 doing the dashboard. I can't quite remember the figures. They go down in amounts. And then the fourth one is to do some more deep dive case studies. So that's collecting a little bit more data, again, using the tools in the evaluation guidance, but with some real support from us. And I think we've got 5 case studies that have been chosen, and we've kind of gone for locations all across the UK and tried to get a mix of location, type of organisation, kind of type of event, so that we can write up some case studies that potentially are showing an idea of what those kind of events might be doing in a wider sense. And so we're going to test those methods this year and then come back in September once the festival's done and everybody's had a bit of time to decompress, and do some focus groups with the people who are involved in doing those 3 different piloting methods to find out what worked, to find out what didn't, and whether or not we take them forward into subsequent years, and how we might roll that out to more people. So that's our kind of approach, is to do those piloting methods. What time are we on? Oh, I'm doing okay for time. That's nice. Okay, so I feel like I've slightly raced through that, and I hope that was all clear. So you should have a bit of an idea of what it is we're trying to measure and why we're trying to measure it, and kind of our different approach and how so what we will do is take all of that information back from the various different ways that we've collected it, and we will write one report. So we will do a report a year, and I think we're due to write the first one kind of October time. So once we've done those focus groups and we've really understood what worked, so we can put in recommendations for what will happen in subsequent years. So gathering data for your own events. So there are two different types of data that we would like you to try and collect. So one is about who your audience or participants are. And then the other is about the difference that the event or activity makes. So we're looking at the kind of who column and then the why column. In those two different things, and gathering data about both. And it's really important that we have the two, so that we can firstly kind of cut the data and understand what difference it makes to different types of people and that kind of thing, but also to understand if there are any really big gaps in. So kind of referring back to those research questions, number 4 is who is it that we're engaging with, and what are the gaps? Do we need to do some really intentional work to try and increase the diversity of the people that we're engaging with? So in terms of gathering data about who your participants are, yeah, so like I said, it's a really important step in understanding the impact that we're having, because people have different starting points in life and they have different challenges, and they therefore can experience different amounts of impact. And I don't want to get into all the kind of analysis that we would do and make this too complicated, but you can imagine that somebody who has fewer challenges in life might actually experience a smaller amount of impact because they're already really confident, or they're already really knowledgeable, or it's really easy for them to access things. Whereas somebody who has maybe more challenges in life, actually coming to an event might have quite a significant impact. And so having some understanding of who those people are also helps us to understand the impact. We also fully understand how difficult it can be to actually collect this kind of information. If you're sat there thinking, well, we could, it's really difficult. Our event is outside and we don't know who's coming and going, and it's difficult enough to just count people who come. We totally understand all of that. It's trying to do what's right and appropriate for your event. And some of the questions that we pose, so they're listed in the evaluation guidance, they can seem really personal. What we always make really clear is that they are completely optional. People can choose not to answer them. We would never expect somebody to kind of stand in front of someone and say, tell me your age, tell me your gender, tell me your this. It's something that people would fill in independently. And the amount that you ask is completely dependent on the way that you collect it and your kind of event and making it appropriate. So we're proposing kind of 3 different ways of collecting that. The first, possibly the most easy, although I appreciate it can sometimes be a bit of a barrier. But if you have the kind of event where people have to book or register, this is the perfect opportunity to collect some of that. We call it EDI data, so equality, diversity and inclusion data. So it's all those different types of characteristics about people, like gender and ethnicity and a postcode, which can tell you a lot. So yeah, if people have to sign up for your event, and if they're doing that online, it's the perfect opportunity to put in some of those questions and ask that data. And quite often when people are booking onto something, they're used to giving some of that data, and you can be really clear as to why you're asking for it. And there's some statements, I think, in the guidance that say, they're certainly on the survey. The reasons that we're collecting this is so that we can fully understand who our audience is, and whether we can improve the diversity and things like that. So, and again, totally optional, don't have to answer them. people can choose not to. We would always add a prefer not to say option on those. So yeah, at sign up, at digital sign up, that's the easiest way to collect that data. A second would be to have a register at an event that people fill in themselves. Here we would say ask a lot less data, because you don't want people standing for ages giving you reams and reams of information, and people won't want to do that, and quite often maybe won't want to answer things that are quite public. So we have a much more pared back version. So in the guidance there is this template. You could use this, so you can just, this is designed so you can just print it out and use this for your event, or you could use this, use this as a template to make your own, branded in your own event, put your own logo on, that kind of thing. But as you can see, that asks a lot less information, so it doesn't ask about ethnicity and gender, but it asks age and postcode, which we as evaluators can take quite a lot of information from. So kind of as a bare minimum, that's really great information to collect, is age and postcode. And then the third way of collecting that information is through the feedback survey, which I will talk a little bit more about. But again, as in previous years, we have a kind of a one-stop shop participant survey that people can choose to answer, to give feedback. And that asks quite a lot of that EDI information. Again, we make it really clear why we're asking it, and that it's completely up to them whether or not they want to answer. So that does have like quite a big page and asks all the different ethnicity questions and gender questions and things like that. So you don't need to massively worry about that, because we've designed all of that and sorted that. But if you can't do the first two, there is another way that we can collect that EDI information. So that's about who your participants are. So moving on to slightly maybe more interesting, data gathering tools. So different tools that we can use to gather data about the difference made. So I've mentioned already that we're going to pilot this feedback postcard. It's a bit bigger than a postcard, actually. It'd be like A5, but something that's designed up and pre-printed for you. So I haven't got a particular slide on that, because what we've got is that group of 15 organisations who we're going to pilot that with, and I will get in touch with them separately to this session to talk through what they need to do and how they send those back and that kind of thing. So that feedback is all they'd need to do for that little pilot. It asks some of that EDI data, and it asks some outcome data as well. So in terms of what you could, if you're not involved in any of those pilot schemes, or even if you are, you may choose to use some of these data collection tools as well. So the first one, which is really nice and easy, is what we're calling a connections poster. So if you remember back to the outcomes that we talked about, 3 of them are about connections to people, place, and the past. So we've designed these 3 different posters to use, and you could use 1 or 2 or 3. It depends on what your event is and which ones are appropriate. So you may have an event where you think, yeah, I want to ask all 3 of those. I think they're an outcome that we would get. And so you could have all 3 as a set. And what we'll do is provide you with kind of print ready digital files. So you could either get them printed really easily online. That would be kind of what I would suggest you do. You can get posters printed really cheaply. There's hundreds of online printers who can turn things around really quickly, relatively cheap to print, even at quite big sizes. The bigger the better, I would say, with these. So it depends on your space. But if you can print them like A1 and have them really big and lovely, really obvious, that's great. So yeah, you may choose that. You go, yeah, I think we would cover all 3 of those. I want all 3 posters. But you might say, do you know what? Actually, my event is something that people do in kind of on their own. Maybe it's a trail or something, and I don't think the people question is necessarily relevant to us. So you could just not use that one. And or your event might be about something that's not about the locality. You know, maybe it's about something that happened hundreds of miles away, and you go, well, people aren't going to necessarily feel connected to this place through our event because that's not appropriate. So don't use that one. And the idea is that you have them up lovely and big, nice and printed out on a wall somewhere. And you buy some of these lovely stickers. Everybody loves a sticker. Really cheap, available at, you know, WH Smith's or any stationers. And people pop a sticker in the box that they feel represents them. So the kind of, you can't really tell, but the little circles represent a person as in themselves, and then either the place, the past, or other people. And so they say, this event has made me feel disconnected to either of those three things. So relatively low resource, not a huge cost output. You know, you'd be talking about a few pounds, and doesn't need a lot of facilitation once it's up. So hopefully that works for some of your events. The next one is the online survey. So I referred to that before in terms of the feedback survey. So as in previous years, we've got one survey for all events. What we are doing this year is we are enabling people to identify the event they've been to. So hopefully we can give you a little bit more feedback, particularly on your event, which you might not have been able to have necessarily before. We are figuring out a way for people to kind of tell us about multiple events. But your poster won't necessarily look like this. This is just an example, but essentially it's a QR code or the link. So if you have people's email addresses that they've signed up to, send them the survey afterwards, or have some lovely big posters up with the QR code at your event. And if you can combine that, either just do that or combine that with the connections posters, that's loads of information, because the feedback survey will give us all the EDI information that we need, plus lots of other lovely questions. And then you'll have this lovely interactive kind of set of posters as well, which will create a lovely visual and tell us a lot. So if you can do those two things, we're absolutely winning. I've got some other tools to take you through if you think, oh, I don't really think they're quite for us, or we can't do any of that sign up form, or the people that we engage with, they're not going to use QR codes, we don't have email addresses. Got some other kind of quite low-key analog tools that you could potentially use. So, and I'm sorry, I am flying through this, so I apologise that I'm going so quickly, just trying to fit it all in and give you some time for questions at the end. So the next tool is to use something called a postcard map, and I know that the CBA team are planning to use something similar, and Claire might want to jump in. So we've used this at various events, and it's a lovely interactive tool that people quite like to come up and find where they live. So we've just done it with an OS map. You might have something that's more visually appealing than that. But essentially what you're doing is you use little luggage tags, or you might have something that's shaped more appropriate to your event, and you ask people to pop on one side to self-describe themselves. As a bare minimum, again, what we want is age and postcode, because that can tell us a lot, but you could give them some prompts of other things to put on, like you may say, you know, describe yourself, for example, your ethnicity, your nationality, your gender. And then you could ask them a question that they pop the answer to on the other side. And you could choose what that question is, make it appropriate to your event. So you might just want to know what they enjoyed the most about the event. If there's a particular skill or knowledge exchange that happens, you might want to know what's the nugget that they're taking away that day. Don't know, I think Claire's there. What was the question that CBA were going to ask, Claire? You were going to use something similar, weren't you?
Yeah, so we have an activity that we do called Places of Memory and Meaning, and essentially we do this activity, but what we've been doing up until now is asking people to just share a place with us that has some sort of meaning for them and tell us a little bit about why that is. So our plan is to carry on doing that, but to then ask people to also add this additional information now onto the back of their card that they add to our map. And we found it's one of the most engaging activities that we do when we do our sort of events and our stands at various activities throughout the year. And it's something that people come back to. They want to see what everybody else has added to the map. And so it tends to be something that's really popular and really people want to kind of get involved in. So I'm hoping this will be quite a nice win for us in terms of then just asking people to give us a little bit more information as we do it on the day. So fingers crossed it'll all work as it does in my mind.
Yeah, well, that's always my wish. Thanks, Claire. Yeah, so as Claire says, it's something that can build throughout the day, and people do tend to kind of interact with them and go, oh, that's interesting that person said that, and kind of makes people think, and you see it grow throughout the day. So a nice one if you've got a kind of space to put a big map up, and if that's appropriate to the kind of event that you're doing. You could even have like stickers but with like smiley faces on, and ask people to just pop a sticker on their label to kind of show how much they enjoyed the day, something like that. Lots of different ways you can take it, and I really encourage you to kind of, you know, we want you to have some agency, because the types of events and the types of organizations are so different. Want you to be able to make the evaluation fit your event. So we won't stipulate any particular way of doing something. As long as the data is collected, we don't really mind how you do it. These are all just suggestions, and we're not saying that you have to do them or that you can't tweak them to kind of work for you. So another lovely one is to do a feedback wall. You can see the pictures on here, they're like particularly designed. The top one was kind of designed by an artist and had all these different questions within it. It's actually a little bit too complicated, I think. I don't know how much information they actually managed to glean from that. Was a project that was before my time with the company. And then that So Festival one is, it asks them to describe So Festival in 3 words. And there's all sorts of slightly hilarious things on there, as well as some valid data. But you could ask things like, what's inspired you today, or just tell us what you thought of today's activity. And it doesn't have to be something that looks like those ones. You know, I am a big advocate for huge rolls of brown paper. Debbie and Claire will know that every time I'm down to a workshop with them, I'm full of Post-its and brown paper. It's my favourite thing, along with the stickers. So, you know, you can be quite low tech with these things, and that's completely fine. So if you've got a wall or a big blackboard somewhere or something, you could pose this question and ask people to interact with it. If walls are an issue, you could do a very similar thing, but on a table, so using paper tablecloths. In the guidance, there is a little caveat that says, remember to protect the table underneath, which was a note from Claire, because marker pen does bleed through paper tablecloths. So again, you could have multiple tables if you've got, you know, the space to do that and ask different questions. And people quite like, it's almost a bit naughty to write on the table. So people quite like it. It's quite a nice thing to engage with. You know, and if you've got volunteers as well who potentially can be having a chat with people and encourage people to have a go and to get involved. Really low cost, again, paper tablecloths cost a few pounds, and you can get some really lovely qualitative data from that. And some of this might feel a bit almost like woolly data, but it's really not. And if we can gather all of these different kind of qualitative methods from various different organisations and events, what we do is go do something that we call a thematic analysis. So we would look through all of that and like pull out the common themes or the common success factors, the common things that come up, and that collectively gives us really, really good, robust data. So don't think that just because you're asking this kind of really open question that it's woolly in any way. It's really, really valid data and really important. So another tool that we use all the time is something called Where Do You Stand? And there are a million ways that you could do this. So you could use this like on your feedback wall. You could have a scale question. So a word use that you've probably done this. You probably did it in primary school. So, you know, you can literally get people to stand on a line, which is something that we do quite often with adults and children. You know, one end of the room is 10 and the high score and the positive, and the other end is 0 and, you know, not feeling great about that. And you ask people to stand on that imaginary line or even masking tape line. Or you can do it on big sheets of paper, or I imagine that there are really novel and kind of creative ways that you could build it into your events. You know, say you were on a dig, you could have literally a line in the ground and ask people to place stones on the line between 2 markers. So you could really kind of play with this one and make it really embed it in your event and make it really work for, and so it feels like another part of an activity rather than just some add-on kind of form that people fill in at the end. As much as possible, we try to make evaluation kind of interactive and part of something rather than something that people feel like they have to do. And there's absolutely a place for surveys, and they're fantastic. And as an evaluator in terms of data, I love them. But you know, they don't work for everyone and they don't work for every event. So there are, in the guidance, there are some statements that you could pose. We've got here, it's kind of like, how much did you enjoy today's event? So really simple, to place yourself on a line. You could do something depending on your event at the beginning and at the end. So totally depends on whether that works for your event and whether people kind of stay for a significant amount of time. But if people are kind of coming in the morning, you could ask them to answer the question, and then if they're not leaving for another few hours, you know, they do something, they're there for a specific amount of time, and you could ask them again to do it on the way out. So if you've got big sheets of paper up, you could use literally 2 different coloured stickers. Creates a really nice visual where you can kind of see the movement of where people felt they were to start with and where they felt they were afterwards. Or you could repeat the same thing if you've used stones on the ground or something, or 11 jars, if that's more appropriate for your event. So you can really play with this one, and I would really encourage you to do that if you're going to use it. So I've talked quite a lot about in-person events, and I'm aware that there are also digital events. So without the best demonstration of using polls, that is my kind of #1 guidance. And sorry, I forgot to show it at the start, which I'm sure you wouldn't do. But yeah, so if you're using something like Zoom, they've obviously got embedded tools within them. So you could ask a poll at the beginning and the end. And again, you gauge your question to what your event is about and what it is that you want to know. You could ask more than one question. And absolutely, if they have signed up and you have email addresses, send them a link to the online survey afterwards. Even better would be to actually put it in the chat at the end of the event and say, if you've got 10 minutes, go and do it now while you're thinking about it. And then also send a follow-up email to say, realise some people had to rush off, but if you've got 10 minutes now, we really appreciate your feedback. So kind of try and get at them, you know, from all angles. So that was quite a lot and quite a brain dump of ideas. What do you do with that data once you've collected it? So again, we're trying to make this as smooth and easy as possible. So there is no shared folder where you have to upload things to. I have nightmares about shared folders. Claire will attest. I couldn't get into the CBA SharePoint last week. So I know that there are all sorts of challenges with that, so we're not doing that. What we are going to do is there will be an organizer survey, as there has been in previous years. And this has kind of twofold, you know, things about it. So that is about gathering data from you as organizers, about the impact on you as an organization, about the ways of working and the process and how things were and what the challenges were and that kind of thing. But it will also have space for you to input the data that you've gathered. So it will ask you what kind of tools you've used and then give you space to kind of put in your numbers of, you know, if you've done a where do you stand, how many numbers did you have at each kind of different part of that. And it will also ask you to upload photos. So if you've done stones on the ground and you've taken a photograph of it, if you've used the posters, it will ask you to upload those photos and also photos of your event, which is really important, and we do use as well in data that photos can tell us a lot. So we're hoping it's a one-stop shop where everything goes, and it's kind of less resource heavy for you, and as easy as possible for you to share that data. So you don't need to remember to send it by email or upload it anywhere. You'll get sent a link and it should all go into there. So I did have exactly, I've now got 9 minutes. I nearly made it 10 for any questions, and I will stop sharing and then I can see the chat.
I just have one. Are you just able to tell people about the flow chart, please?
Yes, so in the evaluation guidance, there is like a decision-making tree. So it will ask you about the type of event that you're having, the type of people that you're engaging with, and it basically takes you on a journey to suggested tools that you could use. So if you feel a bit overwhelmed by the whole thing, and think I can't decide within that what's best for me to use, there is some guidance that can help narrow it down for you. I didn't show it on this, maybe I should have actually, but yeah, so use that tool making, and we will discuss how well that works as well afterwards in terms of the feedback from you about whether that was actually helpful. We use it in a lot of our toolkits, so you know, other organizations that we've worked with have found it useful, so I'm hoping that it will be just to kind of narrow down the overwhelm a little bit in terms of your thinking.
I just wanted to say, if anyone wants to pop their cameras on, or you don't need to put your question in the chat, shout out if you want to ask Emily a question. Emily, I have another one, which is just in terms of uploading the data in the survey afterwards, if people do anything that's not kind of one of the tools that we're suggesting, if they're capturing data in some other way, will they still be able to upload their data to the survey?
Absolutely. So there'll be space for some narrative, you know, to give us some general information, but also if you want to upload a document, if you've put it all in an Excel already, or you've got a Word document with anecdotal information in it, which quite often people will, you know, collect quotes into a Word document. So we will try and have the capability for you to upload documents with the survey as well. So yes, any of that additional information, we're hoping it's all going to go in that one thing.
Fantastic. That sounds really good.
And fingers crossed it doesn't crash, doesn't it? So many Word documents, it just like has a little fit. Are there any other questions? If something occurs to you later, do send it on or something. Sorry, Nigel, you go.
Yeah, if I may ask a question. Debbie, thanks for your email today. So I now know that I'm in that pilot group. Did I sign up for anything in particular, or have you decided which group I'm going to be in?
So you had the option to choose 1, 2, or 3, you know, so you could, and then we've only assigned you one. I don't know off the top of my head, Nigel, which one I've assigned you to. I don't know whether Debbie has.
You're assigned to the one that you said you could do, Nigel. I'll just quickly have a look and tell you.
So some people did tick.
I've just opened the spreadsheet, so
So we haven't assigned, you know, all 3 pilots to anyone. If people said they were happy to do all 3, we've only given them one of them.
Nigel, remind me which group is it? Is it Books Archaeology Society? Yeah.
So while you're looking for that, then something else that occurs to me is so just so everybody on the call knows kind of what we're talking about. I'm running a couple of walks, leading a couple of walks with restricted numbers. So I've already blown the option to get people to gather information from people when they signed up, because I'm now pretty well full. At least I think as of yesterday I only had 1 space left, so I've blown that. So I'll have to find some other way of gathering information. However, as a consequence of running these events, I have been approached by to different organizations asking me to run a specific event for them at another date, which I've consented to. So not falling in the festival period, and I'm not really badging those then as festival activities, but clearly they are demonstrating that I'm already having, I haven't done anything, and I'm already demonstrating that I'm having that additional reach.
Yeah.
Do you want me, I mean, we can talk about this when we have a separate call, but I mean, do you want me to try and gather information from those events as well, even though they occur as a consequence of scheduling this as a festival event, but they're
Yeah.
not going to be delivered as festival events.
So I'll answer that, but Claire and Debbie come in if you want to. So I would say not necessarily the participant information if it's not part of the festival, but what that is demonstrating is the kind of when we talked about the different stakeholders and the knock-on effect. So the sector being one of those, and partners and collaborators. So what we would want is to gather that information from you as an organizer in that survey. So that's part of the knock on it. So one of the questions was making me think actually that we need to include is, has this led to other partnerships or collaborations as a result of the work that you've been doing as part of the festival? So it's more part of that. So I don't know if I've answered that right, Claire and Debbie, whether you want to come in and correct
Yeah,
that.
in the organizer survey, you can add it in there as a bit of, is there anything else you'd like to add about the legacy? And then Nigel or whoever can say, yeah, I earned £1 million from walking round.
So then that occurs to me that you're looking to measure impact over a pretty short time frame, but actually some of these things have legs. So I'm specifically mentioning a couple of things that have come out of me organizing events for this year's festival, but I'm also being asked to do some things that are a consequence of what I did last year's festival. And you're not measuring that. You've no way of measuring that.
No, and I suppose we can only measure so much, but I think that's all still really valid information, Nigel. So you might just want to say that in the survey, actually there are some things that we did just this year that are a consequence of having done something previously, because we're not just measuring this year. So although this year's report will just be about this year, we will also refer to previous evaluations. So it's not like, there's a hard wall up against whatever was collected before, and we're just going to ignore that. We will take into account the previous data gathered, even though by different people, and the previous reports that had happened. And then it's a cumulative thing. So over 3 years, we are building on that data. And part of that we'll be talking about the legacy and the knock-on effects and the wider impact that the festival has. So all still really valid data, even if at this point it's just happened here. We know that it actually has those knock-on effects. Does that make sense? Kind of answer your question?
I think that's really interesting, and I just wonder whether you've prompted a whole conversation then, Nigel, for us to think about what we do next year and how in next year we might be able to reflect on that impact a bit better, because obviously this is just the first year that we're working with Emily and JEM, and we've got 3 years now to kind of to look at that, haven't we? So maybe we could do that reflective process that we've not really looked at before. Should be fab. Nigel, so we don't forget to tell you, we've got you down for the postcards.
Right.
That's all right.
Great. So that will collect some of that that data that you've not been able to gather at sign up, Nigel. Just let anyone leave without filling in a postcard.
Yeah. So from a practical point of view, then you'll send me a batch of postcards sometime in advance of the event. I just need to make sure you've got my correct details then, because been a lot going on, and we've moved house. So
we'll make sure we've got the correct addresses for everybody doing that
Super.
and they're going to the right place. Yeah.
Brilliant. Nigel, can I just check when your other walks are? Just like in terms of dates.
The ones that I've consented to deliver for the other groups. One is the 18th of August, I think. In fact, I think I'm doing 2 on the 18th of August. I think same group, but same organisation, but split into.
Debbie, does that fit in our window? Because while we have like the official festival fortnight, the reason I was asking is because we do capture like we do promote events that are happening kind of in a window either side of the festival, just to make sure that we kind of enable as many people as possible to be part of it and to promote their events. But
yeah, it's 2 weeks after the end, so I'm just going to check. It should do. Then registered on.
And I think my other one's in September, but I can't see it in my. I just can't remember the dates.
The September one definitely isn't part of the festival.
But the August one might be. So we might be able to capture all that information, Nigel.
Right.
While Debbie's looking, has anyone else got any other questions? Before, I'm just conscious of time and we probably need to wrap up shortly.
I'm just going to launch the poll again. Oh no, I can't.
Yeah, I can. I'm sorry, Nigel. It's the 27th of July that you've booked. You've booked it down for.
Sorry, yes, Debbie, I know that.
Yeah.
It was the ones that are the additional ones that I'm delivering.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
That was the ones we were questioning the dates of.
All right. I'm just going to relaunch the poll. If you could be honest and say what you felt at the beginning and what you felt at the end, that would be really helpful. You should be able to see it. In my defense, Zoom changed the way that the questions are asked, and you used to be able to put a question out each time.
It's very helpful learning ahead of the festival. When we set everything up for our online lectures and things.
It was just a really good test.
I will be editing that part out of this video.
But it's actually also a really good point that you can have the best plans in the world for evaluation, and on the day it doesn't always work out how you think it will. So right, I'll end it there.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for giving up an hour of your Wednesday evening. And so you will be receiving the recording and the guidance, I think early next week is the plan, isn't it?
Yes, hoping to get it edited and out on Monday, but if not Monday, it will be certainly before the end of next week to everybody.
Good luck with all your events.
Yeah, really looking forward to hearing how you get on. And thanks again for joining us this evening.
Thank you.